It began as little more than a faint speck against the black vastness of space, too weak, too far away, and too mundane to warrant notice. And yet that small clump of light has become one of the most puzzling mysteries of contemporary astronomy. The object, 3E Atlas, has defied all predictions. It is not a typical comet, and its path towards Mars has astonished scientists, not in what it does, but in what it does not do. It doesn't travel like a comet and doesn't glow like a comet, and its chemical makeup is not like anything humanity has ever seen. Its trajectory is contrary to statistical likelihood, and the accuracy of its path is too precise to believe as an accident. As 3E Atlas approached Mars, it did not just fly by but showed motion that appeared to be deliberate, as if it had purpose. Whatever this interstellar passerby hides may be more than all scientific findings of our era. When scientists first analyzed the chemical composition of 3E Atlas, they only anticipated finding the usual ingredients found in comets: water ice, hydrogen-containing compounds, and remnants of carbon dust. But the results blew them away. Instead, Atlas held enormous reservoirs of carbon dioxide, lesser amounts of carbon monoxide, and merely a barely detectable trace of water, a precise reversal of a comet's typical composition. Its chemistry didn't reflect the icy fringes of a young star system. Instead, it was more like something from much closer to home, the atmosphere of Mars, which is CO2 supermet and oxidized. This implied that 3E Atlas wasn't created in the cold vastness of interstellar ice, but in a world with a planetary environment influenced by heat and minerals. There were some scientists who suspected that the object might be a piece of a Mars-like planet, shattered eons ago and stranded through interstellar space until gravity pulled it back. But the unsettling question remained: did it return by accident or by intention? Its journey across the solar system merely compounded the enigma. While traveling inward, 3E Atlas performed a set of almost perfect gravitational slingshots, gliding in close to several planets while avoiding Earth by mere miles. Each slingshot seemed calculated, steering it along a triangular path neatly coincident with the solar plane. At times, it even slipped behind the sun, becoming invisible from observation, as if evading. When it emerged again, its course was not towards Earth, but directly towards Mars. The course seemed deliberate, as though the object had employed planetary gravity with microscopic accuracy to aim for a single location. When it approached the red planet, it briefly spiked in brightness with no apparent reason, releasing gases that would have deflected its path. Interestingly, its path did not change, ignoring solar wind and plumes of material. It acted not as a wandering body, but as something directed, anchored, and charting. Its makeup only fueled the mystery. Instruments found nickel and iron in the surrounding gases, but their ratios made no sense scientifically. The ratio of nickel to iron was so disproportionate that it contradicted all known natural states. At space temperatures, both metals would have been solid, not vapor. But near 3E Atlas, they seemed to be suspended in gaseous state, softly radiating in emission spectra. Some scientists hypothesized the existence of extreme internal heat or even a purposeful process releasing them. One scientist thought that the ratios seemed to be like an engineered alloy rather than a natural one. Added to the lack of silicates, sulfur, or other typical volatiles, the observations created a picture of something that looked built, not assembled. What if this wasn't debris in the first place, but part of technology, an old probe camouflaged behind a comet-like shell? Then there came a revelation that silenced scientists. When researchers followed 3E Atlas's previous path, they found that it had passed through the same part of the sky where the iconic WOW signal was received in 1977. The coincidence was unusual, the two sources were only a few degrees apart, and the statistical probability of them co-occurring was less than 1%. Could they have anything to do with each other? Was it conceivable that both were from the same source, now intersecting through time? And if 3E Atlas really came from a planet like Mars, might it retain remnants of its past, or of its creators? Its strange green glow only added to the mystery. There was no known compound that could account for it, and the color seemed to defy chemistry. When the object approached Mars, it again brightened, as if reacting to the planet itself, or to memories deep within its metallic heart. As 3E Atlas zipped by Mars, all orbiting spacecraft pointed their instruments towards the mysterious visitor. What they measured broke every interplanetary observing precedent. The object's coma inflated in orderly geometric arcs rather than the random patterns characteristic of comets. Mars Maven orbiter picked up localized ionization bursts in the upper atmosphere that accurately replicated the path of the comet, akin to invisible plasma footprints. The whole planet glowed with an otherworldly auroral light for a few minutes, not due to solar wind, but as if it was triggered by the object being present. Then, just as suddenly, the event stopped. But sensors picked up that the Martian atmosphere had altered, now carrying exotic isotopes and metallic proportions not possible with natural processes. Accidentally or not, the object had made contact with Mars. Mission data flowed back to Earth following the encounter, until it was abruptly cut off. A number of monitoring stations reported that data concerning 3E Atlas had been tagged as classified. Some pieces of data were finally released later on, showing irregular energy fluctuations and irregular telemetry. Independent astronomers did witness something official reports did not, though, a rhythmic radio echo resonating between Mars and the object. The signal pulsed in intentional time intervals, creating a spiral waveform, the same mathematical form present in planetary orbits, hurricane patterns, and galaxies. For some scientists, this was proof of their worst nightmare. 3E Atlas wasn't responding at random. It was transmitting. Whether that was natural harmonization or deliberate broadcasting, the silence that ensued was more disturbing than any explanation NASA was capable of providing. Weeks afterwards, astronomers found something even more bizarre. In one fleeting observation period, the light reflected from 3E Atlas divided into two identical spectra, exactly mirrored. That wasn't optical trickery, it meant that the object had duplicated its own signal, creating a twin copy of itself. The twin was invisible, but the readings indicated interference between two separate sources a few kilometers apart. The object seemed to have thrown out a holographic image, maybe using quantum resonance or dimensional manipulation, to curve light around itself so that it could hide its real shape. The implication was mind-boggling. 3E Atlas was able to manipulate how it looked to others. When researchers plotted its trajectory, they uncovered another shocking revelation. The path of the object was a geometric relation linking Mars, Earth, and the Sun, an almost equilateral triangle of millions of kilometers. Within this sequence existed a secondary spiral trace centered on Mars, sharing the frequency ratios of the 1977 WOW signal. The chances of such an event having occurred by accident were less than 1%. It appeared the object had traveled along a predetermined course. Maybe it was led by ancient technology, maybe it had been reacting to a forgotten beacon. Or worse, maybe it had awakened something that had lain dormant. Almost immediately afterward, Mars started shaking. Sensitive seismographs picked up subtle rhythmic tremors pulse every few minutes, exactly harmonized with 3E Atlas's final measured frequency. These were not seismic in nature, they originated deep within the planet. When plotted, the quakes created 3 rings around a central point that was precisely the area the object had traveled closest. Every pulse corresponded to weak electromagnetic arcs that danced within the tenuous Martian atmosphere. The planet was responding to a summons. Something on the planet's surface had been stirred, and it was continuing to move in sync with the object. Weeks later, reflective oddities turned up on the surface of Mars. Initially brushed off as sun glinting on dust storms, a high-res image soon uncovered something quite different, small geometric pieces in a straight line, each spaced an equal distance from the next one. Their makeup was identical to the aberrant nickel-iron gas ratio of 3E Atlas. These were no happenstance wreckage, they were indicators, ordered in the same frequency spacing as the WOW signal. And then, one evening, Mars flared. A green flash erupted from its dark hemisphere, seen in observatories worldwide. The flash lasted but a few seconds, but orbiters detected an accompanying burst of radiation and radio noise identical to 3E Atlas's distinctive frequency. The flash came from exactly the location where the pieces of metal were, as if they had switched on, contacting or coordinating with something outside the planet. When Mars turned to meet the direction in space where 3E Atlas had vanished, the light appeared to throb outward, as if in response. Then silence came back. The quake stopped, emissions disappeared, and Mars became quiet. But deep space antennae picked up a new vibration, not from Mars, but from outside the Sun, in the direction 3 Atlas had departed. The amplitude of the hum was gradually growing, in perfect synchrony with the rotation of Mars, as if something out there was tuning in, and Mars was answering. Within no time at all, global communication systems were suffering from interference. The static, when decoded, had a waveform that duplicated Mars's path of orbit. Its harmonics copied the very geometry of 3 Atlas's path across the solar system. The source appeared intermittently omnipresent, coming from along Mars's complete path of orbit, as if the planet and shards of it had become one enormous transmitter. Weeks afterward, telescopes picked up feeble green flashes in the depths of space, appearing close to the very location 3 Atlas went missing. The light flashed in sync with Mars's electromagnetic pulse, creating binary similar intervals corresponding to the WOW signal's ancient ratio of frequency. A spooky hypothesis, 3 Atlas hadn't merely flown by Mars, it had awakened it. The green flashes were proof that contact had been made. Shortly thereafter, James Webb imagery captured an epic faint arc outside the orbit of Mars, a huge, symmetrical formation made up of CO2-dense shards that were identical to 3 Atlases. The array ringed the planet, acting as a lens that condensed energy towards the Sun in rhythmic pulses. Mars now rested at the very center of its geometry, enshrouded as if in a gigantic boundary. Next, there was a solar anomaly. A pulse of ordered radiation burst out of the Sun and flowed outward along 3 Atlas's incoming path. Every 37 minutes, the signal recurred, louder each time, in an expanding spiral shape, a stellar map leading somewhere outside our solar system. One thing everyone agreed on, this was not random. It was a message. And then, everything ceased. The hum, the lights, the quakes, all went away. Mars was silent again. But long out in the depths beyond Pluto, telescopes detected a last signal, ringing back from the void. It wasn't just noise, it was patterned. Decoded, it showed a 3D map of our solar system. All the planets were present in precise scale, except Mars, which glowed green and throbbed next to a repeating waveform very much like the 1977 WOW signal. Some scientists assert the event was a natural resonance, a cosmic fluke. Others aver that it was intentional, that 3 Atlas was an ancient probe, back from reactivating something buried on Mars before relaying home. But the enigma lingers, for that signal, weak and irrevocable, continues to propagate, touching every telescope on Earth. Maybe 3 Atlas wasn't an intruder but a key, one that opened up a sleeping system that has waited for this day for thousands of millennia. Maybe Mars wasn't selected at all, maybe it was the beginning. Because if every path, alignment, and proportion is designed, then 3 Atlas didn't simply stop by our solar system. It went home. And now, somewhere beyond the Sun, the signal still pulses, strengthening with each cycle, as if in greeting of our discovery, or in anticipation of what follows. And so the question remains, was this a message from the stars, or a reminder that the universe has always known we were here? If this tale left you wondering what's out there past Mars, be sure to subscribe, enable notifications, and stick around, because the next signal could already be en route.